I'm Sean Martin, manager of the South Dakota Hall of Fame Visitor and Education Center in Chamberlain, and I'm joined by Jackie Horton. Jackie is Executive Director of Mitchell CASA. Thanks for joining us, Jackie.
Thanks for having me.
Well, we just want to start off by asking you, what does it mean to you and your team to receive the Acts of Excellence Award from the South Dakota Hall of Fame?
Well, first of all, it was just an honor and very humbling to even be nominated for the award. And then when we found out we received it, we were just so truly just warmed our hearts, simply because it meant that the South Dakota Hall of Fame, number one, knew who we were. And that's always been our goal, is to get who we are and what we do out across South Dakota. So for you to know who we are, but then want to stand behind us and have the same values for children who are abused and neglected that we do, it was just very heartwarming. And it inspired our volunteers, our board, and our staff. Now we need to continue doing what we've been doing for the past 20 years. And it reignited our passion for the organization and the cause.
And we should probably just pause for a second and explain, what does CASA stand for?
Sure. So CASA is Court Appointed Special Advocates. It was developed nationwide in 1977.
Tell us a little bit about the history of CASA in Mitchell and what led to its establishment.
Sure. So in the Mitchell area, it would have been back in 2001, the Davison County Child Protection Team decided that there just needed to be something more for children that were part of the child welfare system, and they came upon the CASA program. So it was that team, the Davison County CPT, that established our program, and then I believe it was in November of 2021, they were able to hire a part-time director. And if you look back over that time frame, in 2010, when I came to the program at the very end of 2010, there were 12 volunteers serving 30 children with 23 on a waiting list. And as of yesterday, when I left for Chamberlain, we had 46 volunteers who had already helped 81 children this year, and there are no children on a waiting list.
Let's talk a little bit about how CASA has evolved over the years. What are some of the major accomplishments, milestones that stand out to you?
Sure. So the first one is obviously receiving this award, but then also, if you go back a little bit, when we first started, we just served the children in Davison County. And since that time, we have expanded into 8 additional counties in southeastern South Dakota. So now we cover Aurora, Brule, Buffalo, Douglas, Hanson, Hutchinson, and McCook. So we have quite a wide variety of area to cover. So that's been a big stepping stone for the program and the children that we're serving. And then the other thing that we've done is we have, with serving that big of a area, we also need to have more staff and as well volunteers.
Okay, and that was my next question. Talk a little bit about the challenges of that kind of expansion.
Sure. So the biggest challenge has been when you serve that big of a county area, it's hard to get to know all of the community leaders in that area. So that means lots of time away from the office to build those relationships. But the hardest part is getting people in the outlying area to know who we are and what we do, just because budget is limited and advertising is expensive. So it's meant lots of community presentations. So if you're listening, watching, and you live in that area, we love to come do community presentations. We've got staff that are on the road almost every weekend doing presentations.
Jackie, talk a little bit about the process that a CASA volunteer goes through from recruitment to actually getting into the work.
Sure. So recruitment is simple. You fill out an application. It's online, mitchellcasa.org. And then from there, you'll be called into the office, or we can do an online interview. Then you consent to a background check. After you've consented to the background check, had your interview, and decide this is right for you, then you go through virtual training. After virtual training, you're sworn in by a judge, and then you get to go through and pick your case and start serving children.
How do you measure the impact that CASA has on children and families?
The biggest way that we do it is by the positive feedback that we get from the parents when their children get to come home and the children that we're helping. But then on an analytical side of it, we look at the number of children we're serving, the times the volunteers are meeting with the children, where they're meeting with them, how they're meeting with them, as well as we receive feedback from the judges, the attorneys, the social workers at the Department of Social Services. So it's a wide array of things that we use to make sure that we're meeting the needs of the children in care.
What role do volunteers play in court proceedings and decision making?
So the volunteers, it's always up to the judge whether or not the children go home, but it's our volunteers who are the only volunteer in the courtroom for the children. So it's their court reports that they write to the judge, letting him know not what's best for the family, but what is best for the children. And they do that offering recommendations, suggestions as to what would help the children most.
How do you ensure that your volunteers gather and present the information correctly?
So when I spoke about training, there's a 30-hour training and it's virtual. But what happens during that training is there's a whole section on court report writing. And so during that training process, it talks about what it is that needs to be in the court report. We have great relationships with our judges. And so the judges will say, it's these things that I look for in the court reports. And they even talk about that when they do the swearing-ins with the volunteers. And so that helps our volunteers know what it is the judge and the court are looking for and how to write those reports. But after they're written by a volunteer, it doesn't stop there. Then they go to my staff and they review them, and they may or may not have changes. And then once they come to me, I review them again because I don't do a lot with the casework. I have a program staff that does that. So if there's something in that court report I don't understand, more than likely the judge or the attorneys aren't going to understand it either. So that's where we make some additional changes, and then the volunteer signs off on it and I sign off on it, and then it goes to the court. So it's a process.
It sounds like it.
Yeah.
How does CASA collaborate with other agencies and organizations to support your mission?
So in 5 of the 9 counties that we serve, we have what I spoke about a little earlier, child protection teams. And we meet with those teams on a monthly basis to talk about maybe children that aren't in care at this point, but children who just need some extra help, and we just need to keep in the communities eyes and ears on them and the family. And sometimes what would be great is if the children never came into care, that we could offer resources to those families prior to them needing to be taken away from their homes. Because a lot of times parents, it's not that they're bad parents, they just don't understand the parenting role. And that's where the community can step up and help.
Well, let's conclude by talking about the future of CASA. Where do you see this program going?
Well, statewide, in the next year, there'll be a new program opening in Pierre and another one in Aberdeen. And our goal for our program is we just want to keep recruiting volunteers so that we can always say we never have children on a waiting list. Because when I started, there were children waiting. And I can't imagine being a child or a family part of the system who needs a CASA volunteer but can't have one because we don't have the volunteers ready to help them. And it's so much about the volunteers. You know, we've talked a lot about the role that they play, but it's more than that. They provide these families and these children with stability, support, and hope. And a lot of times the CASA volunteer is the one constant in that child's life.
Well, as we wrap up our time, Jackie, what's something you'd like folks to know about CASA maybe that we didn't cover?
I'd love to talk about a story that just happened this week. We have 3 children that came into care in 2020. So that means they were in the child welfare system for 1,643 days. But during that entire time, they had a CASA. Her name is Mary, and she stuck with them for over 1,500 days. And she actually, when they moved to their pre-adoptive placement in Virginia, Mary got this in May to go see them and received huge hugs from them because it was a surprise to them that they were coming. But it's those kinds of things and their adoption this week, that's what keeps our staff, our board, our volunteers going. It's those happy endings that these children so desperately deserve.
That's a wonderful story and a great way for us to conclude. Really speaks to the impact that CASA has. Jackie, thank you and CASA for all the work you do. And again, congratulations on being awarded Acts of Excellence.
Thank you.